Looking at India's progress towards sustainable development goals, it is important to underscore this fact that India has been following the motto and the agenda of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas, which translates as together for everyone's growth with everyone's trust. So this very much resonates with the core principle of SDG that talks about leaving no one behind. Now, given that India is a federal country which places utmost importance on this and employs whole of government approach, leaving no one behind. Now, given that India is geographically and demographically very diverse, so therefore localized approaches towards planning, budgeting, implementation and monitoring becomes highly critical. And so therefore, we very much recognize the importance of the local context, in the light of sustainable development agenda. So whether it is about formulating, the relevant indicators for monitoring, for implementation, and also for ensuring a robust review and feedback mechanisms. So, if we understand, for example, somebody who's living in a remote corner of the country, maybe in the northeastern states, maybe in the Himalayan states, or maybe somewhere in the central part of Malwa region, or somebody who's living in the coastal part of this country. So there are so much diversity in the local context. The same indicator may not be very much relevant in the different contexts, and so therefore the government of India and various state governments, also government at the district level and the Panchayati Raj institution in the villages and elected local body in the urban areas, all these decentralized government systems have recognized that we have to understand the local context and come out with locally relevant indicators based on the needs and aspiration of the common public. This is the approach through which SDG will really become realistic and bring real change in the life of people. So in the Indian context, the major crux of implementing SDG lies with the Niti Aayog, National Institution of Transforming India, the erstwhile the Planning Commission. It is the nodal body or the agency which has been entrusted with this important task of monitoring and evaluating the progress of SDGs, facilitating leadership, innovation, collaboration and capacity building across the states and union territories in the country. So, it promotes the idea of healthy competition and collaboration, where different government bodies work together in the partnership and they learn from each other's good practices and whatever different bottlenecks that different states or UT might be facing in their efforts of implementing SDG at the local level. So in this country like India, achieving SDG is only possible through localization, given the diversity of the local issue. We have more than 600,000 villages in this country. There are more than 8,000 settlements of different population sizes. So that is the extent of diversity of geography and demography and socioeconomic condition of the locations. So if you look at every 28 states and 8 union territory have implemented and embraced the agenda of sustainability at the local level. And these states have advanced in the trajectory of localizing SDGs. So what does it mean? Whether you talk about the states or union territory, they have themselves brought out their vision for implementing SDG at the local level. And implementation of SDG in the country has been conducted using 3 important pillars as espoused by Niti Aayog. The first is creating institutional ownership, which means that it is the responsibility of the Niti Aayog government of India to work with all the states and the union territory, provide them the blueprint, encourage capacity building, encourage, coming up their vision document, their own locally responsible strategies in order to implement the global SDG in consonance with the national priorities and make it relevant for the local state level condition. Second important pillar is, of course, having a robust review and the monitoring system. So the government of India with Niti Aayog has come up with something called the SDG index and dashboard. So what does it do? It basically measures all the states and union territory on different SDG goals and indicators, and this practice has been implemented since 2018 onwards. And there are also some districts at which district level also we have started implementing SDG monitoring through relevant data system in the country. And recently Niti Aayog has also implemented SDG urban index for 55 Indian cities, promoting healthy competition between states and the cities. And so the idea is to learn with governance, to learn with collaboration. And the third important pillar is developing capacities for SDG planning and monitoring. And this is very critical, because given the diversities and the issues at hand, which is so critical, learning from each other's agenda and action is important. So there is regular, advocacy, regular workshops which are being conducted by Niti Aayog in partnership with different state agencies in order to develop capacities among the resource person at various levels of administration. And the final pillar is promoting a whole of society or a Jan Bhagidari approach, which, as I was referring to, is basically horizontal collaboration. It is just not only the government at the particular level, union level, state level, district level, or Panchayati Raj level. The government has to tie its hand with the local population, civil society, private sector, academic research institution, common people. So basically the idea at the helm of affairs and at the different administrative level is how to make SDGs act as a public mass movement of development. And so these are major 3-4 pillars through which Niti Aayog has been working with various state governments in order to implement the localization of SDGs agenda. And so this way, if you look at the progress in the last 4 to 5 years, Government of India has worked with various state governments and came up with identification of important goals and targets through which credible action may be implemented on the ground. So if you look since 2018 onwards till date, there have been progress in terms of goals. So Government of India and various state governments are presently working on 17 goals, 16 goals where we have objective indicators, and 17th, which is partnership, we have the qualitative indicator. At present there are more than 120 indicators that Government of India has been able to identify in partnership with the states, and so these indices or these informations provide us very handful information. Where do we stand, or how much progress have we made, and how much road we have to travel in future. So this way, with partnership among different states and the union government, we are measuring how we are progressing. So in 2018 there were 62 indicators which were covered. Moving on, by 2020 there were 100 indicators which were covered, and by 2022-23 there are close to 120 indicators on which we have reliable information and on which action is being implemented. And so this is how localization of SDGs at the subnational level help us to understand where we stand, what are our strengths, and what are the important challenges. So let's take for this example, if you look at this data on the multidimensional poverty in the country, and this clearly shows that, for example, the state of Bihar, almost 52% of people are suffering from different forms of multidimensional poverty, which refers to economic, social, health. So this is the combination of different deprivations. So more than 50% people in the states are suffering from multiple deprivation, and they are categorized as poor. On the other hand, if you compare with Kerala, less than 1% of population in the state as a whole have multiple deprivation of poverty. So if you compare at the state level, this is an extent of variation that we have to address. And I'm sure if you go down within state, these disparity may be even more apparent. And so similarly, if you go to the other indicator, which is the status of child nutrition, in the states. So again, if you look at Bihar, more than 40% children in the states were observed or found to be under or malnourished. On the other hand, if you look at the state of Kerala, again less than 12% children were malnourished. So this clearly shows that there is a clear-cut geographical and spatial patterning of various development indicators, and thus it's important. So the idea is to learn what Kerala is doing well or some other state is doing well in order to achieve these important progress, whether it's about nutrition, whether it is about multiple deprivation or strengthening education or skill building. So in this way, these robust data ecosystems will help our nation and various states and union territories to work together. So localization, in India, if you look at, there have been 8 to 10 themes that Government of India has adopted and identified in order to implement the agenda of SDG at the local level. The first important theme is poverty-free villages and enhanced livelihood. And a lot of action is now being taken at the village level, at the micro level, where the development may be delivered to the local public. The second important theme is, of course, healthy village. So the idea is at the village level, the local people with the local government have to work together in terms of developing the health plan for the local citizens, similarly strengthening the local healthcare systems, promoting healthy behaviors in terms of yoga, in terms of water and sanitation, so in order to keep the village and villagers healthy and vibrant citizens. The third important theme is child friendly villages. We know that India is a very young country wherein youth and children almost caters about 60% of our population, and given this size of population, it is very important that we should make our villages and our cities safe, secure and friendly for kids, and for that decisive action is needed, and thus this has been recognized as an important theme of action at the village level. Fourth important theme is, of course, water sufficient villages. So the recent program of Har Ghar Jal, tap water provision to every household in this country, has been implemented in a mission mode level. So water sufficiency at the village level is critical. Government of India has recently conducted a huge atlas of identifying water bodies across country, and the whole idea is basically to understand where the water body exists, how can we rejuvenate them, and the idea is to provide tap water for all the citizens and all the households across villages in the country. Fifth important theme is, of course, clean and green villages, and which is very much related with the Swachh Bharat mission. So the idea is to ensure that our villages, our neighborhood, our cities becomes green and clean, and this can only be ensured not only with the action from the government side, but the role of common people, different stakeholders, private sector, civil society is very important, along with government decisions and actions on the ground. Sixth important issue is building robust and sufficient infrastructure across the country, and a lot of work is right now underway in order to strengthen the basic infrastructure, whether it is road network, whether it is railway network, airport network, health facility, education infrastructure. So all these things will help to ensure that sustainability is attained by people and across geography of the country. Next important issue is socially secured villages, and we know that India is very diverse. We have different population groups, social group, religious group, gender diversity. So in order to ensure that there is socially secured villages, there is a need for collective action on the ground. So the idea is to promote social capital at the village level, and on which important action is also underway. Then good governance. So good governance is again very critical. So the idea of the Government of India is to do maximum for the people. So minimum governance, maximum delivery of services. So good governance is very critical, which means that you have to provide services to the people at their doorsteps in a friendly manner. And finally, women friendly villages. So as we know that 50% of population in any society are women, and it's very critical to understand the status of any society is reflected from the indicators of women and minorities. So in order to ensure that women can also participate equally on equal foot with men, it is critical to ensure that at village level, at city level, neighborhood level, safety and security is very important. And how can we ensure that environment is such where fair opportunities are available to everyone irrespective of their gender and social identities. So if you look at these 9 major themes, which are very much based upon the SDG 17 global agendas, so these 9 themes have been identified and action is being implemented across the country by the state and the national government and district administration along with Panchayati Raj institutions. So these Panchayati Raj institutions, which are nothing but the local administrative bodies, have already got administrative power and financial power to implement the agenda of development and growth and prosperity and peace, which is identified by the local public. These are elected governments, and hence people's desire and aspirations are reflected through the elected bodies which are working at the village gram panchayat level or urban bodies in the urban communities in cities. So another important aspect the government of India has identified is issues of regional deprivation. So they have come up with about 142 aspirational district programs. So in India we have presently about 720 districts, out of which government of India have identified, based on different important indicators of poverty, health, nutrition, gender, basic infrastructure, administrative capacities, about 140 districts from different part of the country. These districts or regions in the country have been chronically deprived. So through this aspirational district program, the idea is to generate the impulse of development and prosperity and sustainability, and the idea is also to make competitive progress among these districts as well. And so if you look at in the 5 years, a lot of action in terms of identifying the common challenges and innovative strategies of action on the ground through which development impulses may be triggered in these most backward districts or regions in the country. So this is another example of leaving no one behind. This agenda focuses not only on people, places, regions and districts as well. So therefore aspirational district program is also a very welcome step in this direction. Now, one of the example of SDGs is the gender equity. Now, gender equity is again correlated with all other SDGs. So, if you work on ensuring gender equity, means that if you ensure fair opportunities for people irrespective of their gender, identification. So this will help us to meet other sister SDGs as well. So Government of India has been measuring, to what extent different states and union territories stand as far as gender progress is concerned. Now, if you look at this color is red, which basically shows us that the progress is basically lacking, except for a few states in, for example, Kerala and Himachal Pradesh and Sikkim, some of the states. For majority of the states, there is a lot of room for work in terms of ensuring equal playing field for people, all Indians, irrespective of their gender identities. And so it is important for us to recognize this fact that if we work on issues of gender equity in this nation, it will help us to meet various other goals and targets as well. So what are the major challenges that we face as far as gender equity is concerned? If you look at the first important issue is the son preference. So irrespective of improvement in the economic circumstances of people over the years, the burden of poverty has come down, education level in the country has improved, but urbanization levels are also very rising. But with all these important developments, we observe that gender situation in the country continues to remain a very important challenge. Part of the reason is that among people who are elite section of society living in metropolitan cities, working in one of the most well-paid jobs, even among them we have observed from various data from census and various national representative surveys that the preference for son has not come down, which means that in order to have one child, the issues of female feticide is very problematic. You know, irrespective of all the legal instruments being in place, we still have studies and evidence which continue to show us that the preference for son or dispreference for daughter is quite rampant. It is not something which is only restricted among rural society or traditional society. Rather, it is more still very much prevalent in the elite section. So there is a need for value-based education which instills among citizens of this country the idea that irrespective of your gender or your biological sex, anybody can do, provided they get fair opportunities in life. Second important issue is, of course, the cultural norms in the country. So part of the reason is that starting from the families, the neighborhoods, the villages and cities, for some reason opportunities are not equally available for people from different gender identities. So what happens is that if suppose the family does not have resources, so whatever resources they may have, they would give preferences to son to investing the resources disproportionately across children of different gender or sex identities. So which means that a male child would get better education opportunities. Maybe he or she would be sent to private school for the studies. On the other hand, the girl child probably would not be sent to school. Rather, she would be kept at the house to look after household chores. And likewise, even in the professional space, we observe that opportunities for women are not easy. In the last 20 years, we have witnessed a very discouraging trend that the female labor force participation rate have been coming down. And this is again very alarming, because India right now is in a stage of demographic transition where more than 40% of people who are in the working age category. So, and both are male and female together. So if we do not invest and create opportunity equally for men and women together, India will not be able to achieve its maximum potential of demographic dividend. And so for the country, in order to achieve the economic prosperity and development, it is vital and critical that we invest in the education, skills, health and nutrition of all the citizens of this nation, irrespective of their social, gender and geographical identities. And this is what the sustainability localization agenda is basically focusing at, leaving no one behind. So gender issues are very critical if we have to ensure that we achieve sustainability at the ground level. Thank you so much.